What happens when three African leaders, one in military boots, one in a suit holding contracts, and one holding secrets that could light up a continent, walk into the halls of global power and say the one thing the West was never prepared to hear? Your aid is a weapon, your deals are traps, and your control, it ends now. This wasn't some polite protest. It was a warning shot heard around the world. At what was supposed to be just another routine UN session, where wealthy nations smile for the cameras, talk about shared values, and quietly tighten the neo-colonial noose, something rare happened. The script was ripped to shreds. Paul Kagame didn't mince words. He exposed the aid game for what it really is: control with a sugarcoating. Dr. Arikana Ndiaye, she tore the mask off secret colonial-era pacts that still haunt African economies today. And then came Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Calm, bold, defiant. He didn't just talk sovereignty, he declared a war, not just military, but economic, ideological, and psychological. Africa didn't ask for permission. It stood up, three voices, three battlefronts. And suddenly, the suits in the room started to shift uncomfortably. This wasn't business as usual. This wasn't a random outburst. This was a coordinated shutdown of the neo-colonial script that's ruled Africa for generations. President Kagame didn't just speak, he exposed. Dr. Arikana didn't just warn, she revealed. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just resist, he declared war, not with bullets, but with boldness. And for the first time in a long time, Western diplomats didn't just hear opposition, they felt fear. Because this wasn't noise. This was a signal. This was an alliance. A new front is opening, not just in politics, but in power. And if these leaders succeed, centuries of global domination could come crashing down. So now the real question is, what did they know that has shaken the West to its core? And why is their unity suddenly the biggest threat to the entire global order? In this video, let's pull back the curtain. Ibrahim Traoré was already sparking a wildfire across Africa, one that refused to die down. His revolution wasn't just military, it was mental, a shift in how Africa sees itself. But the fire didn't become unstoppable until others joined him, not just allies, but giants. And one of them, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda. Now here's what makes Kagame different. He didn't bang the table. He didn't chant slogans. He didn't march. He just spoke, calm, controlled, but surgical. And with one quiet sentence, he shook the very foundation of Western power in Africa. Aid is more political than anything else. He didn't say it with anger. He said it like a judge handing down a final verdict. Not an opinion, not a debate, a truth. And in that moment, the silence in the room was louder than any protest. Because Kagame wasn't just speaking for Rwanda, he was exposing a system. The very system Traoré has been fighting tooth and nail to dismantle. For decades, we were told it was charity, aid from the IMF, the World Bank, the EU, dressed up as generosity, a helping hand to poor African nations. But Paul Kagame shattered that illusion with a single, piercing truth. Aid isn't about development, it's about control. He exposed what most leaders only whisper behind closed doors, that African governments are often forced to accept money not to build schools or hospitals, but to buy silence, to obey. Need funding? First, pass the political resolution they want. Need a loan? Align your policies with their playbook. Otherwise, the tap runs dry. What they call support is really a leash. And in that game, democracy becomes a performance. Sovereignty? Just a word, conditional on Western approval. And Kagame didn't say it with rage. He said it with clarity, calm, like someone who had seen the strings, and finally decided to cut them. According to Paul Kagame, those grand African summits, they're not what they seem. They're stage-managed theater. African presidents invited, not to speak truth or chart bold futures, but to smile for the cameras, to sign pre-approved documents while the real deals are cut in back rooms by Western diplomats. This isn't diplomacy, it's optics, public relations wrapped around neo-colonial puppetry. But Rwanda, Kagame says they started to break free the moment they stopped begging, the moment they dared to say no. "We cannot build dignity on borrowed money," he declared. A sentence, just a sentence. But it cracked the walls of an entire aid industrial complex, and to Africa's youth, those listening carefully, it wasn't just a speech, it was a code, a quiet message from a man who rebuilt Rwanda from ashes, who defied international pressure, and who now dares to say, if aid is a weapon, then Africa must disarm the lie. It must unlearn dependency. It must learn how to walk alone, on its own terms. Kagame's words didn't just expose hypocrisy, they unlocked something. They gave permission to confront the lie, permission to speak without fear. And that's when Dr. Arikana Chihombari Kwao stepped forward. If Kagame shattered the illusion of partnership, Arikana tore the mask off the trap designed to replace it. She didn't speak like an outsider. She didn't wave slogans or theory. She spoke as someone who had been inside the machine, in the diplomatic lounges, at the closed-door meetings, with the documents most of us never get to see. And what she saw was disturbing. As the former AU ambassador to Washington, Dr. Arikana witnessed how African presidents were not just persuaded, but cornered into signing deals that looked like progress, but felt like chains. Long-term contracts that handed over ports, pipelines, rare earth minerals, all dressed up as development, when in truth, they were extraction, not a handshake, a handover. She described confidential memoranda that bypassed parliaments, deals where foreign companies gained control over critical infrastructure for 50, sometimes 99 years. And all it took was a desperate government, a well-dressed envoy, and a polished lie. But Arikana didn't just tell us this happened. She warned, it's still happening. And here's the kicker. And what happens when a president says no? The script changes fast. Suddenly, a rebellion is funded. Opposition voices get amplified. International NGOs start sounding alarms. And the same leader once hailed as a partner in democracy is now branded a dictator. Dr. Arikana didn't speak in metaphors. She laid it bare. The West doesn't kill nations with bombs anymore. It uses banks, it uses credit ratings, it uses strategic media headlines. Sabotage now comes in a suit, not a uniform. And then she dropped one of the most explosive truths, the colonial pact. Yes, in 2025, it's still active. France's former colonies are still required to deposit their foreign reserves in the French central bank. Billions of dollars, African money, sitting in European vaults, earning interest for Europe. While back home, schools lack chalk, clinics run out of medicine, and youth stare down poverty with no options. This isn't history. This is happening right now. And the worst part, it's not even a secret. It's just something no one dares to challenge, until now. And maybe the most damning thing Dr. Arikana ever said was also the simplest. Why is it that leaders who beg for crumbs are praised as democratic, but those who demand sovereignty are instantly labeled dangerous? Her answer? Because the West doesn't fear dictatorship, it fears independence. Let that sink in. To be obedient is to be credible. To be defiant is to be unstable. In this upside-down system, the more dignity a leader demands, the more the world tries to silence them. Her words didn't just echo Kagame's truth, they sharpened it. Because she wasn't just diagnosing Africa's illness. She was naming its captor, calling out the system by name. And that's when everything shifted. That's when Ibrahim Traoré entered the arena. But Traoré didn't walk in with carefully rehearsed speeches. He didn't come from embassies or think tanks. He didn't study under IMF consultants or Western professors. He rose through the ranks of Burkina Faso's military, shaped not by diplomacy, but by sandstorms, hunger, and gunfire. Where Kagame exposed the facade and Arikana decoded the contract, Traoré brought the match. No suits, no script, just a voice that roared through every room it entered. Because when he speaks, there is no velvet, there is volcano. Before we dive back in, quick question. Are you enjoying the video so far? If you are, go ahead and hit that like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more African news and gists All right, let's keep going. You see, Traoré didn't ask politely for respect, he demanded it. And then he put his words into action. French troops, who had long lingered in Burkina Faso under the pretense of counterinsurgency, were given one clear message: pack up and leave. No negotiations, no compromises, just expulsion. The usual Western voices, RFI, France 24, their broadcasts, often instruments of soft power and influence, were suddenly silenced, banned from the airwaves. And those IMF loans, normally hailed as lifelines to struggling economies, Traoré flat out rejected them. For him, sovereignty isn't just a slogan to rally crowds. It's a battlefield where every inch must be fought for. But here's the thing, this was only the first strike. Unlike many leaders who lean on imported advisors or endless aid missions, Traoré went straight to the source, the ground. He sent soldiers out not just to fight, but to build, constructing roads, digging irrigation channels, turning military units into farmers. He proved a powerful truth: a nation can feed itself without begging on the global grain market. Gold, Burkina Faso's most prized resource, had long been shipped out raw, lining foreign pockets while locals stayed poor. Traoré shut that down. He built a national refinery and declared that Burkinabe gold would now shine for Burkinabe hands. His wasn't just reform, it was a rupture, a bold break from the economic blueprint handed down since independence, one that made Africa rich in resources, but poor in outcomes. And while Western diplomats whispered dictator behind closed doors, his people were chanting his name in marketplaces and villages, not because of propaganda, but because they saw real results: children in school, crops growing, roads rising from the dust. His ultimate vision: a federation, a united West Africa built on mutual defense, shared infrastructure, and deep economic integration. Together with Mali and Niger, Traoré is shaping what's now being called the Sahel Axis, a coalition of nations no longer waiting for handouts, but actively defining their own destiny. While Kagame cracked open eyes and Arikana unveiled the chains, Traoré brought the hammer down. Their messages started to sink, and that's when the world truly began to panic. Because here's the thing, it's one thing for African leaders to speak out alone. It's a whole different game when they speak in unison. For decades, Pan-Africanism was a dream stuck in slogans and summit speeches. But now, it's walking the walk, talking the talk, building the blueprint. This isn't just symbolism, it's strategy. Each leader brings a crucial piece of the resistance puzzle. Kagame fuels the intellectual firepower. Arikana carries institutional memory and the legal evidence. Traoré embodies defiance in action. 3 minds, 1 mission. They're not just pointing out the problem, they're building the solution. And that's what truly shakes Western powers to their core. Not fiery speeches that fade into the wind, but solid blueprints. Not broken chairs at the AU, but bricks laid in new refineries and factories. For the first time, criticism is turning into construction. Ideas are becoming factories. Words are filling bottles, with Burkinabe cashew juice no less. This isn't the usual African Union paper declarations gathering dust on shelves. This is coordinated sovereignty in action. And here's the kicker. For those in Washington, London, and Paris, it's not just happening quietly, it's catching fire. African youth are tuned in on TikTok, sharing speeches, remixing resistance into music, graffiti, fashion. So what if this actually works? What if a single African country says no and thrives? What if 3 countries unite and survive? That's not just risky, that's revolutionary. Colonialism didn't die, it transformed. It lives now by dividing. Label Mali a failed state, and the world nods. Paint Burkina Faso as an insurgency hotspot, and alarms ring. But what if these nations stopped being isolated? What if one spark of defiance set the whole continent ablaze? The West knows exactly what that means: a collapse of control. If Kagame keeps breaking the psychological chains, if Arikana keeps pulling back the curtain on hidden deals, and if Traoré keeps showing that independence isn't just possible, it's necessary, then the whole system crumbles. From Ghana to Guinea, Ethiopia to Senegal, a new message will echo loud and clear. We don't need you, not your aid, not your loans, not your NGOs. And it's already happening. African youth are saying no to endless visa waits. They're launching startups in their own backyards. They wear Made in Africa not just as a label, but as a bold statement of pride and rebellion. This is the chain reaction the West fears most. Because every time a so-called third world country frees its mind, a crack appears in the foundation of first world dominance. The economic grip weakens. That's why embassies grow nervous. Military bases shift uneasily, and the old elites fall silent. Because what happens next isn't theirs to control anymore. This isn't about 3 leaders. It's about a whole continent waking up, remembering its power and worth. Africa isn't asking for a seat at the table. It's taking over the room. It's no longer apologizing for demanding respect. It's declaring its rights, loud and clear. The aid industry, shaken to its core. Extractive deals, laid bare for all to see. The puppets, finally being rejected. What's left now is a new Africa, louder, bolder, and ready to rewrite the rules of the game. Because when Africa speaks as one, even the mightiest empire can't silence that roar. So what do you think? Are we witnessing the dawn of a revolutionary wave that will finally set Africa free? And isn't it true that every so-called freedom wave before was carefully managed by the West, meaning the outcomes always served their interests? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, history is watching. And if you want more videos like this, stories about African leaders who are breaking the mold and pushing the continent forward, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and stay with us.